In 1969, a group of astronauts changed the world. They ride the biggest rocket ever built to the moon. It's the culmination of more than 10 years of space pioneering and the foundation for more than 4 decades of exploring worlds beyond our own. This is the story of our greatest adventure. NASA fulfills John Kennedy's dream to land men on the moon and bring them back alive.
Neil, Buzz, and Mike, I want you to know that I think I'm the luckiest man in the world in welcoming you back to Earth.
But Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin clocked just 2.5 hours walking on the surface. Their successful mission paves the way for fellow astronauts to embark on more advanced lunar exploration.
Trainers came to us one day and said, "We're going to teach you what you need to know when you get to the moon." We said, "Hey, we know. We're going to put up the flag, we're going to talk to the president, we're going to come home." They said, "Yeah, that's what you think."
Just 4 months after the first landing, Apollo 12 carries Pete Conrad, Richard Gordon, and Alan Bean to the moon.
257 feet coming down the side.
Unlike Apollo 11, Conrad and Bean make a pinpoint landing.
Contact light, outstanding, man.
The area is called the Ocean of Storms, the site of an ancient volcano. They spend nearly 8 hours collecting 75 pounds of moon rocks.
Pete, you're 34 minutes into the EVA and you're right on the Mount Goal timeline.
We were tired, we were dirty. It went by pretty quick, but we did a lot of hard work.
From an unmanned probe that landed 2 years earlier, they retrieve parts that contain a remarkable discovery. Bacteria from Earth seem to have survived in the vacuum of space.
When you're the only 2 people on the moon and everybody else is 240,000 miles some other direction, you're an explorer.
9 months later,
Okay, and we're free.
Apollo 14 is racing to the moon. The commander is Alan Shepard, the first American in space. Their destination, Apollo 13's landing site, the Fra Mauro Highlands.
We're on the surface. Okay, we made it to landing. We might have sloped, but other than that, we're in great shape. Right on the landing site.
Scientists think this region could hold clues from the time the moon was just being formed. The astronauts bring a handcart to haul 90 pounds of rocks back to the LEM. And Alan Shepard even finds time to convert the rock sampler into a golf club.
Continuing 6 iron on the bottom of it. Well, I'm going to try a little sand trap shot here. Miles and miles and miles. Good now.
Once again, large audiences are watching when astronauts broadcast from the moon. With the success of Apollo 14, NASA plans to expand its lunar explorations with a bold new series of missions.
The whole objective was to put out a whole suite of geological experiments and scientific experiments.
We wanted to collect enough data so that we could analyze the moon and see what it's made of. What is the structure of the moon? Is it like the Earth? Is it like an asteroid? Is it, what's the structure of the moon?
For the new missions, astronauts will spend more time on the lunar surface and bring back heavier payloads of moon rocks. For more ambitious explorations, they'll have to cover a lot more territory. NASA develops a revolutionary vehicle.
The lunar rover was a very, very creative effort. We knew we wanted a vehicle that could roll along on that what seemed like sandy kind of a surface. And it had to be operable by people in suits that were very, very stiff and without a whole lot of mobility.
The lunar rover is a 4-wheel drive 2-seater. It has a top speed of 8 miles per hour. A magnetic compass won't work on the moon, so a computer constantly plots a straight line back to the left.
Charlie and I worked on a lunar rover vehicle over at the Marshall Space Flight Center, and it was a great driving machine.
We had the car to broaden our exploration base. Before the car, we had no ability to walk more than 300 or 400 yards. But with the car, we could cover a radius of about 5 miles.
Apollo 16. John Young, Charlie Duke, and Ken Mattingly blast off into the Florida sky. Young and Duke used the lunar rover to explore an area known as the Descartes Mountains.
This is gonna be a good day, Charlie. Oh, spectacular. Just spectacular. And here we go.
We had trained that John Young would be the driver, and I would navigate.
Yeah! Woo! Man, that was great. Big skid. Man, you are really bouncing. Is he on the ground at all?
Well, I just see how fast the thing would go downhill, and it would do pretty good.
We're doing 10 clicks, Tony. That's 10 kilometers. Huh? He's got about 2 wheels on the ground. Okay, turn sharp.
It was fun riding a rover. It was a lot of fun. Bounced a lot.
Oh, I believe it, Charlie. It's ready, John.
That moon dust was pouring down on us like rain. And so after a half of a moonwalk, our white suits turned gray.
4 clicks an hour, Tony, and Charlie, you hit my arm.
I spent a lot of time saying, Charlie, don't bump my arm. Because he was sitting right next to me. And so any time he moved his hand, it would make my wrist turn the steering wheel. Not a good thing where you're heading for big blocks.
You want to park this thing in? Rod, up over this little ridge here. We're stopped, and we're just about directly north of the outset. Right by that big rock. Okay, Tony.
The rover's TV camera beams pictures to a team of scientists.
Good job, Charlie. As you come around there, there's a rock in the near field on this rim that has some white on the top of it. We'd like you to pick it up with the grab sample. This one right here? That's it. Okay, we copy that.
Working from the rover, they collect a record 209 pounds of moon rocks.
We could collect a lot more rocks, and we could see a lot of variety of rocks as we journeyed across this landing area that was selected for its geological significance. So it really revolutionized the lunar surface exploration.
Boy, isn't the beauty of this place is just absolutely incredible.
Duke and Young drive the rover hard for nearly 17 miles over rugged terrain. Parked at the landing site, it documents Apollo 16 blasting off from the lunar surface.
What a ride, what a ride.
Apollo 17 targets another geologically rich area of the moon. But this will be Project Apollo's final lunar landing. Budget cuts force NASA to scrub 3 more missions already scheduled.
We were disappointed because they canceled 18, 19, and 20. We had the hardware. We had crews picked. And all it was operational money.
NASA wants the last moon mission to be their greatest. the landing site demands the first night launch of the giant Saturn V rocket. On board, Ron Evans is command module pilot. Harrison Schmitt is NASA's first scientist in space. And the commander of Apollo 17 is Gene Cernan, a veteran of Gemini 9 and Apollo 10.
Apollo 17 was a real goal of mine. I knew before we launched that Apollo 17 was going to be the last flight to the moon, and I knew I would be the guy who make the final steps on the moon. There are a lot of people, I think, in positions of responsibility within NASA who, being the last flight, just wanted me to get back alive.
More than 500,000 people come from all over the world to watch the final lunar launch.
Roger, we're go for liftoff here, Capcom.
Apollo 17 is Gene Cernan's second trip to the moon. On Apollo 10, he flew a lander to within 47,000 feet of the lunar surface. This time, he's cleared to land.
I needed to go back on Apollo 17. I wanted to cover the last 47,000 feet. I've been to the moon, folks. I'm not going back again, not to land. And I think people knew that. Obviously, I was not going to do something dumb, but I was going to land.
You're looking real good, Jim. Right down the line.
Stand by for touchdown. Stand by. 25 feet. Down at 2. Feels good. 20 feet. Going down at 2. 10 feet. 10 feet. Got contact. Stop, push. Engine stop. Okay, Houston, the Challenger has landed.
Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt join an elite fraternity. Only 12 men have landed on the moon.
As I step off at the surface at Taurus Littrow, we'd like to dedicate the first steps of Apollo 17 to all those who made it possible.
Over the next 3 days, Cernan and Schmitt spend more time walking on the moon than any other astronauts.
I was strolling on the moon one day in a merry, merry month of December. May to May, that's right. May is the year of the month.
A team of scientists monitors their work.
Hey, there is orange soil. Well, don't move it till I see it. It's all over. Orange. Don't move it till I see it. I've stirred it up with my feet. Hey, it is. I can see it from here. It's
Okay,
orange.
Let's think about this thing logically. You know, they're up against a constraint anyway, so they got to leave at a certain time regardless of what we got.
We'd like you to leave immediately. Okay. My golly, this time goes fast.
3 years after Neil Armstrong became the first man to walk on the moon, Gene Cernan prepares to be the last.
When I crawled up the ladder I knew I wasn't going to be coming this way again. And I just wanted to stop time. I wanted to freeze time. I want to take advantage of this moment.
Okay, 1 minute, Houston. We're 50 seconds now, and we're go. You're looking good here.
It's only 11 years since Alan Shepard became the first American in space, and John Kennedy challenged the U.S. to go to the moon. Now, Apollo 17 is the end of an era.
It's like breaking off a love affair. You've had a marvelous time, but now it's time to bring that relationship to an end.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Burn away, Houston. Vector good. Next thought. Victor. Yeah, that's right.
Cernan and Schmidt start the long journey home. The camera on the rover will transmit pictures back to Earth for another 27 hours. The final images from man's last trip to the moon.